welcome to Beauties and Beasties, the independent pest podcast for the UK.
Hello, hello, hello.
Good evening. How are we?
I'm doing very well. I've had a good week. It was my birthday last weekend. What do you think of that?
Happy birthday for last weekend.
Go on. Look at this, rugged exterior. Gimli the dwarf. How old do you reckon Gimli turned on the 20th this year?
62.
Oh, you're not far off. I hit the big 4-0. I'm now officially old, man. I'm 40.
It's all downhill, mate.
All downhill.
Genuinely, it's like all downhill from here, from there.
I really enjoy the fact that when I speak to people who are younger than me, they're just like, "Oh, you've got to be at least 50," because I look like Gimli the dwarf. I look haggard and old. And then I speak to people who are older than me, who have spoken to me, and like, you have the maturity of a 16-year-old. So I reckon you're no more than sort of like early 30s. So 57 again. So there we go. I'm not a wee thing. Only 40. I just had a very tough paper round.
Did you do anything special?
We're going to try and guess whose age?
Can if you want.
Oh. It's got to be, what was it? You bicentennial now. You've seen 2 centuries pass. We're all actually bicentennial, aren't we? That's a scary thought. We, ladies and gentlemen, both Hugh and I were around before the internet.
Yes, yes.
Something for our younger generation.
Beep.
Oh. Go on, in the comments now, very quickly, because I'm sure a lot of us listening are all. Does anyone else remember that you could tell when you were going to get a phone call on your first mobiles because all of your speakers in your house?
Oh, look at! I like Terry. Terry's a good guy, isn't he? He's that's so kind.
I think Terry's drunk. There we go. So, did I do anything nice for my birthday? Actually, no. I'm having my birthday celebrations this weekend coming because unfortunately, Papa Wade, who you may have all seen on previous podcasts, had some bad dental work done, and he ended up getting quite a he managed to sort of like get an abscess, which was so bad from some bad dental work that it hospitalized him 2 days before my birthday. Yeah, I know.
I don't want to know that because I've had a tooth out today.
Oh God. And
it's all stitched up, so I had stitches in my gob, which I didn't even know was a thing.
Oh, yeah. I've had all 4 of my wisdom teeth out, which is a long and hilarious story for another time. But they put stitches in for all of those. It was like eating spiders for 2 weeks. It was horrible.
Yeah.
Every time I touched it, I was like, oh.
I didn't even know that was a thing. He said, "Oh, I'm going to put some stitches in there." I'm like, I don't want to know. And I loved it. It must be a bit like pest control. How we dispatch things instead of killing.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "I'm just going to have to do some modifications to your tooth before we take it out." And I'm like, "Modifications? What do you mean?" He's like, "Oh," I said, "Do you mean you're going to have to smash it up into little pieces and take it out, aren't you?" He's like, "Well, yeah, basically." I'm like, modifications.
Let's be honest. You didn't say with elegant prose you're going to do all of this. What you actually said was,
yeah.
No one understands you.
Surgically removed my teeth and then surgically removed my wallet.
Oh God, yeah, it's so expensive, isn't it? But there we go. Anyway, away from the world of
yes, teeth
surgery.
We're gonna get people switching off otherwise.
God, yes. How was your week?
How was our week? It was not a good week. So this week,
Mm.
dear old customer, she died.
Mm.
Been going there for 35 years, and we found out today that she died.
Oh
She's been a
no.
client for that long. Um, so she was a lovely old lady. So that was a bit of a downer on that one. Um, but other than that, and it's been very quiet this week, work wise. Somebody has definitely turned the tap off. But there you go. These ups and downs. And it's always been like that at this time of the year for us. It's we sort of have a bit of a February, March, April, May, June, July. So yeah, so it's been a bit quiet, but that's okay.
And you're not the only one to have said that. I've heard that from a couple of people that it's been sort of like a bit of a quiet couple of weeks to month. Now, classically, we used to have sort of like rodent season and insect season, but over the last couple of years, they've kind of blended into one. Do you reckon we're going to return to that sort of like on off, or is this just a bit of a weird?
I don't know. I mean, it really was up until Christmas. We were absolutely mental. We were turning work down because we just couldn't fit it all in, and then it really was um, chop. To the point of
Mm.
I was like, I wonder if our VoIP system is working. Have we run out of credit? So I'll check the phone a minute. So it really was. But when I spoke to my son Ryan about it, he was like, "Well, do you think that's just because more people are changing the way that they communicate? Because we were still getting emails coming in requesting for work and WhatsApp messages, but the phone wasn't ringing. So
Mm.
it was like, maybe that's the case now."
You need to do one of your little spreadsheets again and have a look to see what's going on it. You did one of those at end of not last year, year before.
Oh yeah,
We
yeah,
had a
yeah,
chat about
yeah.
that.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, there was a bit of yeah. I suppose over the years I should have really. I mean, it's like the people. I always said every year I'm going to keep a count of the wasp nests this year. And you start off in your diary and you're counting them away, and then all shit lets loose and it just goes by the by, doesn't it? So and ultimately, you analyze. I suppose if you're a good business, you probably analyze and know exactly where you are throughout the year. And
Mm.
but I just call it analysis paralysis, because ultimately what you're going to do, you're going to give up because it suddenly dropped down. I don't think so. After 35 years, you're just going to carry on going,
Mm.
aren't you? It's so it is, unless that data is usable, then what's the point in saying to yourself, "Oh, we're down this month." Oh, well, are we? Well, if we are, next month will be better.
Well, I suppose actually you say analysis paralysis, but for those who are just starting off or those who are sort of like transitioning from small to busy, I remember one of the things that you said in your last sort of like meta analysis was you realized that actually, although you thought the majority of your work was like it was rat work, when you actually had a look, am I still here?
You're a bit frozen there, but you're back.
I, I'm back now. You realise that the majority of your work was actually mouse work, and so with that information, you should have been able to last year target better through your marketing and your targeted advertising mouse work to bring in some more
Mm,
of that. So no,
well, maybe. I don't target anything. It just
it
happens.
just happens. Okay, fair enough. So no, my week was good as my internet, however, is going to give me apoplexy.
You, Alex, it's time you moved into the 21st century with your internet. Why don't you get a
I
big
have.
cable from the house out to the office?
I should do that. Yeah.
Cat 5 cable strung all the way across.
You joke. I'm going to do it. I pay a small fortune for my internet. And this happens every week.
This
So
is Starlink, isn't it? You're on.
no, Starlink's on my little cans up at the farm. I'm in the crooked
Oh,
cabin
okay.
in my garden. So I
Yeah.
am 5 meters away from my router. shouldn't be a problem. Either way, technology issues aside, let's talk about something a little bit more fun. We're talking about data, we're talking about analysis paralysis, and you know where that really all comes into play in a big, big way?
Go on.
Field biology, isn't it? So with that, let's bring on a field biologist who not only does, and I know this from personal experience, a cracking field biology report, but also is a phenomenal trainer and should be able to help those who are looking at making that big leap from technician to field biologist. So with that, and with much aplomb, let's bring on Debbie.
Good evening, everybody.
Hi, Debbie.
Hiyo, how are you? Happy birthday, Alex. You don't look a day over 39.
Thank you very much.
Great.
That's exactly what we want to hear.
Great.
No, not a creep. I think that's a legitimate and fair comment.
Yeah.
So, Debbie, I know you quite well. I've known you for years and years in your many facets through the industry, but there will be plenty out there who may be meeting you for the first time. So please tell us about your journey towards pest management, and then we'll talk a little bit later about your journey within pest management. So how did you get here? How did you become in the pest management industry?
Okay, so I started in pest control in the 80s. It was a company called PHS, if anybody remembers, Personal Hygiene Services, and at the time they were one of Rentokil's biggest competitors. And I worked for them as a surveyor.
Were they? Were they really?
Surveyor, pardon?
Were they? Were they really?
Well, they like to think they were. And that's
more like it.
That's the spiel they told us. You want to come and work for us? Yeah, we're Rentokil's biggest competitor. Come and work for us. So I was a surveyor with them for about a year, I think it was. And being still a youngster at the time, I got bored and decided to go into a different industry. So I joined the motor trade, working on parts counters as a business development manager. Then I started working for a car magazine. I don't know if anybody knows Exchange and Mart. Yep. So they have a free car pickup, which was Auto Exchange, which I used to work for them. So I worked with them for a while, and it was very pressured. It was sales figures, it was targets. And I mean, I've done sales figures and targets, before as a sales rep. And it got to the point and I just went, I don't want this anymore. So I started having a look around to see if there's anything else available. And I saw that one of the big companies was advertising for a pest control technician. I thought, I'm an outdoorsy sort of person. I'm not squeamish. I can do that. So I went for the interview, and they obviously saw that I'd been a surveyor for a little while. I said, will you come and do surveying? I was like, absolutely not. Don't want to do anything more to do with selling. So I said, I'll come and be a service technician. So in 2005, beginning 2005, I started as a service technician, and then worked my way up. I worked my way up to a high dependency technician. So I'm looking after the big supermarket chains and the big food manufacturers. And then in 2008, they came to me and said, look, a field biologist position is becoming available. Are you interested? And I sort of said, well, tell me a bit about what it entails. And so they told me, I was like, yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. So in 2008, I moved up to the role of field biologist for one of the big companies. Stayed with them for about 8.5 years. Left there as a senior biologist and went into the distribution side, working with the products. Worked with one of the distributors for about 7.5 years as doing biology work. Started doing their training, their RSPH training, bespoke training. Moved away from there for about 1.5 years to go and do some training for another company. And then I was put in a position where it was, do I need to find another position? And my husband said, well, why don't you go out on your own? And I was like, do you know what? Yeah, I can do that. So that's what I did. So it'll be 2.5 years ago, we started Wilson Pest Management and Training. And the rest is history.
Cool.
So so many of you probably met Debbie through her days at Pelsis and Pest Fix, but may not have realized that the life of an independent consultant I've got a little experience with that. How are you finding that? It's, you know, how are you finding being totally independent for once?
It was scary at first, as I suppose it is for anybody starting out on their own. But when you've got good people there support you, I mean, Alex, you have been a massive help and support to me. You know, when I've been ready to jack it all in, I've spoken to Alex and he said, look, you know, come on, you can do this. It's just a lull. We all go through it. You know, have faith in yourself, because you do doubt your ability sometimes. And I think you do that whether you're a technician or whether you're a biologist or whatever you do doubt your qualifications, you doubt yourself. But he said, you know, push through. So we did.
How long has it been now? How long have you been on your own?
2.5 years.
And all that time you've managed to keep the faith?
I have. I've been keeping the faith since I was 14. And a lady doesn't give away her age. Oh, but I'm a lady, so yeah, I'm 58. So I've been keeping the faith for 44 years.
So and come on then.
What keep the faith means?
Yeah.
You know.
Come on then. Top 3 Northern Soul tracks. Top
3 Northern Soul tracks for me. Robert Thompson, Salvation.
Yeah.
Fantastic tune. Chubby Checker, Just Don't Know. Another fantastic tune for me. And I like Billy Storm, Educated Fool. Now, some people may say it's bordering on the R&B side, but I like it. But I still listen to the top 500. You know, myself and my husband, we DJ.
So he's coming home, Beverly.
Oh, Beverly Ann. Yeah.
Yeah. Suspicion by the Originals.
Yeah. I've got that by the Prophets, which was an unreleased acetate.
And I'm sort of bordering between Gonna Be a Good Thing by the Yum Yums and Nothing But a Heartache by Temptations. Not Temptation, Flirtations. Bit of a crossover there. Yeah, Flirtations. Yeah,
I'd go Flirtations. That's what I go.
Ladies and gentlemen, I just need to give some context to this phenomenal sort of like sidetrack we got here, which is Debbie, and I'm sure she won't mind me saying, in her spare time, you're a DJ, aren't you? And you go out and you go and DJ. Where were you last time? You went somewhere hot and sunny. Was it? Well, you tell me. You go and DJ around the world.
Well, myself and my husband, we DJ in the UK. Various parts of the UK, and we also DJ abroad. So back in January, we were in Spain, DJing at a weekender in Spain. Tomorrow, we're going to Yarmouth because we also play reggae. So
I've got that one. Hang on.
Not the Bob Marley stuff, but the Toots of the Maytals, John Holt, Derek Morgan.
Top 3.
Top 3.
Yeah.
I still like Boris Gardner, Elizabethan reggae, because I've been an old skinhead in the 80s. That was one of my favourites. I like Watermelon by Toots and Maytals. And another one, Herman, To the Fields.
I got Pressure Drop, Toots and the Maytals. I got Crying Every Night, Stranger Cole.
Oh, yeah.
And Jimmy Cliff, Harder They Come.
Oh, Harder They Come. I like Jimmy Cliff, Miss Jamaica.
Yeah.
Great ska record.
Yeah.
So we DJ Northern Soul, and we also DJ reggae. So say tomorrow we're going to Yarmouth. We both DJ on an internet radio station called Boot Boy Radio. Big up Boot Boy. Mark does, my husband does a lot of reggae on there, and then every 4th Saturday we do Mark and Debbie's Club a Go Go. So I do like a bit of 50s R&B, a bit of the rocking R&B. Bit of Big Joe Turner, that sort of thing as well. So we Dolly Cooper. So we do that as well.
So come on then, Al Wilson, The Snake, yes or no?
Great Northern Soul record. Why not? Fantastic Northern Soul record. Frank Wilson, Do I Love You? Great.
Yeah, I've got that written down as well.
It's just commercialised.
Because there's quite a bit of snobism about that in there, when people are like, not that again.
I would play The Snake, because to me it's a great Northern Soul record. And it's a Northern Soul DJ that won't play it, to me, is just too much above his station.
Everybody gets up, everybody knows it, it's a bit of fun. Exactly. Well, after all, it is about having a bit of fun, and it's not about
it's a dance culture, isn't it? And you can't find a better dance tune than the snake.
What's the point in digging out something? There is a point, because you've got to educate people, but what's the point in digging out something that nobody even knows? Yeah, it's hard to dance to something that you really haven't got a clue what it is. I think it is anyway.
I 100% agree. I mean, we've got all our records are original. We don't play anything apart from originals. We don't play pressings. We don't play second issues. We play originals. So we've got about 8,000 records, singles downstairs. So there's probably about 6,000 Northern Soul and Motown, and about 1,000, 2,000 reggae. And some of our records we've paid out, well over.
I was going to say there's some big money there.
Yeah,
some
well
big
over
money there.
Record. Because it's silly money now. When I was doing it, and my husband's older than me, when he was doing it, you could pick up records on car boots, places like that for tuppence. And now that record, I mean, prime example, I bought Al Wilson, Help Me. I got it from America. I paid $14. It's now worth 400 quid. And I only bought it 10 years ago. So it's just silly money. Reggae's getting the same as well. Reggae, Pempalem, Azzy Lawrence, really, really good. Modio R&B ska. We paid 800 quid for it, and it now goes for 1,500 quid, $2,000. Silly money. A bit of vinyl, or
Right, I've taken my 10 minutes up.
Yes.
That's amazing. It's great to sort of hear, because of course we're all in the same industry together, but we all have passions and hobbies outside of that. So sometimes it's really nice just to hear, this is the thing that pulls us all together. But yeah, we've all got passions outside of that, haven't we? You've obviously got your music. I've got lifting heavy things at the gym. Hugh, I don't know. Oh, you whittle things, don't you? You're a whittler.
A whittler. A whittler.
Whittler.
A mess with sharp knives.
That sounds terrifying. Right, so back to the topic at hand, which is you started your consultancy, which, what do you specialize in? So what does your consultancy do? We've had Paul on before to try and explain what a consultant is, but from your point of view, what is a consultant? What's your jam?
So as a consultant, we're like an information station. We're there to keep people informed. We're there to inform them through training. So we run training courses to make sure people are all keeping in with industry standards, to impart information to people joining the industry, to help them on their way to a career in pest control. We do biologist work to give information to the sites that we're dealing with and the pest control companies that we work alongside. We do field biologist work as well to ensure that the companies that are producing the products make sure that their products are at a level which are safe to be produced. A lot of the places we deal with are food manufacturers, and they must produce food that's fit for people to eat. So, having a pest control company, having a biologist going in there ensures that they keep on the right track with what they're doing, what they're producing.
So we just so because there are going to be people possibly listening that absolutely have no clue why or what a field biologist is, or which customer would possibly need a field biologist inspection. So generally speaking, it would be your BRC audit, BRC sites really, wouldn't it? Or Marks and Spencer suppliers, Tesco's farmers and growers, and people like that, really. Yeah,
there is Salsa, which is companies produce local food or food for the local community around there. Sometimes a Salsa site. I mean, I do a biologist inspection for a Salsa site because they produce a lot of food for the local area. So they opt for a biologist inspection.
I was going to say that's their own request, though, isn't it? That's not in the Salsa spec.
Not, no, you don't have to have a biologist inspection in the Salsa audit specification. I'm pretty sure you don't. Anyway, I mean,
no, you don't.
We've not been doing Salsa for very long, but BRC, BRC, and it depends on the risk factor of the site. It depends on the risk factor of the site for any site when you're deciding on how many visits on the visit schedule that you're going to offer that site from a pest control point of view and also from a biologist point of view. So you look at the risk factor, and if the site is of a high risk, the food it's producing, the area it's in, places like that, then you can do the maximum amount of biologist visits a year. And with pest control, there's no industry standard to the amount of visits that you should offer your customer a year. We don't just go in there and say we do this because this is what everybody else does. We go in there and we say we do this because we've done a risk assessment, we've looked at your company, we've looked at what you produce and how you produce it and the risks involved to your business, and this is what we offer.
So the thing is as well, I think there's a lot of confusion in the field biologist, and also who's going to do that inspection, because as far as the BRC specification says, it doesn't say that you need to be a certified field biologist. All it says is that you should be more qualified than the normal technician doing the job.
Yeah, it doesn't state. No, it doesn't state biologist on the specification on version 9, the BRC. It doesn't state qualification, a field biologist qualification. It doesn't state field biologist. But when you get up to the higher or the other levels or the other auditing specifications like the M&S, they do require a certified field biologist.
The M&S say, though, either an in-house verified field biologist or a certified BPCA field biologist. So that's what I can't get, is if you're an in-house verified field biologist, I can write on this piece of paper now, I am a field biologist for Guardian Pest Control. I've verified myself as a field biologist. So that seems a bit, Alex?
Yeah, I was about to say, there is some confusion over the terms field biologist and certified field biologist. So certified field biologist is a qualification, which is an industry qualification, which was devised and implemented by the BPCA. And a field biologist is simply just a role or a title. It's simply, as you said before, it's somebody with an expert knowledge greater than that of the technician undertaking the routine work. And you might ask yourself, well, what's the point in a qualification if all I actually need is to show that I'm better? Well, the qualification is just, it does that by de facto, isn't it? It's the easiest way to prove that you are more qualified than the person before. But I take your point. You could write on a bit of paper, but I would argue the case if something was to go wrong and it was to then go to, let's say, a court of law, and they say, show me how you are in fact more qualified than that. And if you pull your napkin out and it says, I'm a special boy, that exactly that, that probably wouldn't stand up in a court of law. So having that formalized qualification helps to do that. Debbie, your thoughts on this?
I agree. I gained my certified field biologist qualification at the end of last year. Up until then, since 2008, I've been working as a biologist, but I speak from experience when I've been to a site and I did an audit on that site, and this was a site that, it was a BRC site, and it was a site that stored tins of food. So they only had one biologist inspection a year, and I did that, bearing in mind that it was about 7 years ago, so it wasn't that long ago. And I did the inspection, I did the report, I sent across the qualifications, and at the time I had the BPC, the RSPH level 2 certificate. I also had the advanced technician. I also had the RSPH level 3 in food safety and manufacturing. And they turned around and they rang me on the day and said, where's your certified field biologist qualification? And I said, well, it's BRC site. I've got these other qualifications, so therefore I'm qualified to be doing the audit on your site. And they said, no, the BRC auditor has specifically requested a certified field biologist. So I was pulled up on it. So that it doesn't make you question yourself, but it's when other people question you, you know you've got the experience, you know you've got the qualification, and you know you've got the title field biologist, but it's when other people question you. And we're finding a lot more now as well. People are saying, well, are you a certified field biologist? Well, a certified field biologist is the qualification, but if you've got the experience, it's the same with technical inspector. Technical inspector is a qualification, yeah, but you can still be a technical inspector and do the site audits because you have expert knowledge. So
yeah, because
I would add to that, sort of like Susan's asked, what's the difference between biologist and technical inspector? Certified field biology and certified technical inspector, both qualifications in their own right. I would argue that certified field biologist is more geared towards inspections of food sites against audit standards, whereas a technical inspector tends to be a bit more broad, and you're looking at other sites, you're more looking to then trend analysis, root cause analysis of necessarily sites that don't have a food standard to them. They may be food standards, but that's my take on that.
So certified, just so everybody knows, certified field biologist BPCA, you will need to get to that standard before you even take the qualification. You will need a health and safety level 2 qualification.
Minimum.
You will need a level 3 food qualification, or your level 3 food qualification. You will need 5 previous projects, field inspections as your portfolio, and I think you'll need a minimum of 2 years experience, and I believe you do need your CAT first, don't you?
You need a CAT or the RSPH level 3.
Yeah, but in saying
2 years experience, 5 reports, and you need to be a member of a CPD scheme.
Yeah. Do we think collectively that for the qualification framework that's being discussed, that there should definitely be a progression to have an RSPH certified field biologist? So then that training, rather than not having to go at the BPCA, because I know they don't particularly want to go down the route of training that specifically anymore. But do you think that if the RSPH took that qualification over, it would open up that qualification to be taught by other people like yourself, Debbie?
I don't know. I wonder whether or not if you had an RSPH field biologist qualification, whether it would be recognised in other industries as opposed to the BPCA one, which is obviously for the British pest control industry. So would that be more, I would say acceptable, because the other one's acceptable. That's not the right word. But would it be more recognised if there was an RSPH?
It would be more recognised, surely, because at the moment, the RSPH level 3 is the only real recognised qualification, because the other one is just a made-up qualification.
I would argue that all qualifications have to start somewhere, and they, it's like saying all words are made up. It's true, all words are made up, and you get new words out of the dictionary, but you have to start somewhere. And yeah, I don't disagree that when we have that.
Sorry, it would make sense to me to have it as part of the framework. So that would be the top tier of the framework. So you got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, a definite progressive route for people if they wanted to take it.
I definitely believe that in all of the discussions that we've had from NPTA members, BPCA members that have come on the podcast and talked about their experiences with the qualification framework, yeah, the idea is that we have a logical progression up there that gives people something to aim for. And yes, if you remember, the BPCA developed the BPCA diploma, which became the level 2 RSPH level 2 award in pest management. So there is precedence for this, and it's not like this can't happen. So yeah, I fully appreciate that when, not if, when we get a new qualifications framework, things like the technical inspector and the certified field biologist will be top of the tree, and it will give people a very clear pathway for progression in this industry, which is recognised by everyone.
Yeah, I agree. I also, what we were talking earlier, weren't we, about the CAT and the RSPH level 3, about how it can be a bit, people can get a bit distinguishing between the two. Do we call it the BPCA level 3, or do we call it the advanced technician? You know, when we've been doing RSPH level 3 before, and we've gone to a site to teach the technicians, they automatically think that they're doing the BPCA advanced tech, because the people that have done it before them and said, oh, you're doing the level 3, it comprises of this, 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 and this. And we say, no, that's a different qualification, but it's the level 3. It's not actually, it's the certified advanced technician. But there is a bit of a misconception between the two. And I think there always has been, because I say I did mine in 2009, and I remember at the time being told, you're going to be doing the BPCA level 3. And when it came through with the BPCA Part 2 diploma, you know, which was the advanced tech at the time, we were all, well, this doesn't say anything about level 3 on here. So there was, yeah, I think there's still a little bit of confusion with that as well.
I've just seen a question there that I think we need to go back through, if that's okay. There we go. Is the biologist inspection routine specified? I can answer that, or you can answer that, Debbie. It's fine.
No.
Debbie?
If I understand the question, is it specified? We have guidelines, if that's what you mean, and we have, you know, every site will require the same attention and detail that we give. So, Andy, I'm not 100% sure on what you mean by inspection routine specified.
Go on, Alex.
I'd hazard to say that it's, again, your biologist inspection routine is not specified in sort of like pillars of stone and letters of fire, in the sense that you won't find audit standards saying it has to be precisely this number. The term that you will find time and again, and this goes back to how often should you return to site, how often should you have a fellow biology inspection, is as often as is necessary, depending on the risk to that site. So if you've got a high risk site, going back and doing a field biology audit once a year may be insufficient, especially if that site is dynamic, if there's a lot of change, if there's a lot of you know, changes in process, or all of these things, you know, what I mean by dynamism. So you might need to come back more regularly. It's down to you as that field biologist, that person who has the knowledge, to say, look, this is probably going to require 2 visits a year. In some highly specialized cases, you may even be looking at quarterly visits in order to maintain that level of scrutiny on a site, to make sure that the food and the goods going out are safe for human consumption. So it's all down to your risk assessment.
Yeah, you'll see on the if people have never seen it before, you will see on the specification, it will say, we recommend, you know, whichever one it is, whether it's Tesco's, Marks and Spencer's, Waitrose, standard BRC, it will say we require some of them will say a minimum of one an in-depth inspection per annum, based on a risk analysis, just like Alex has said. Sometimes you'll be able to argue the point that they only want one a year, they only need one a year. But, you know, a good auditor will know whether they should be having 4 a year or 1 a year. You're not going to get away with it. If it's a cardboard manufacturer that's making cardboard boxes for, I don't know, whatever, you might get away with 1. If it's a ready meals place that's packing thousands of ready meals a day for hospitals, you're not going to get away with 1. It's just not. And on the same hand, without blithering on, you have to justify why you've only said it's 1. There is actually a BPCA little ready reckoner, wasn't there? You put in the information, it's quite simple, and it comes up and it says, you need 12 routines and you need 2 field book.
I was going to say, There is that BPCA Ready Reckoner. There is also, not to blow my own trumpet, there's the IPMC risk wheel that you can use for exactly the same thing as well. But here's a question for Debbie here that I think you should be able to shed some light on. Andy's expounded on his previous statement, said he actually means when carrying out the audit, is there a set standard or is it down to the biologist to decide? So I think what Andy's asking is, when you turn up to factory X, do you decide what standards you audit to, or does the site tell you? And if the site tells you, how do they decide what standards you should be auditing to at that point?
I think it's the site doesn't tell you what standards. We know who they're audited by, so we know what level they are required. But that's for things like the pest control company. You know, if it's BRC, the follow-up procedures. If it's M&S, the follow-up procedures. But when we go there, and Terry's absolutely right, all visits are in depth. Whether it's a company that's, like you say, storing cardboard, or whether it's a company that's producing food for a hospital. All the inspection reports and all the inspections, we're there for a reason. We're there to make sure that the site is clear, the site is pest-free. We're working with the pest control company to make sure they're maximising what they're doing in their service visits, and to make sure that site is working legally. You know, we're there to help the site. We're there with information and recommendations and things like that, to ensure that what the site is producing or what they're storing or what they're transporting is done to a high level. So every visit is in depth. And I have sites where, and Alex has seen my reports, some of my reports are 34 pages long, because I go in depth in every single area of that particular site. So I will go through every single area. I will go through every single possibility and the repercussions of a possibility, or I will go through what I find and the impact it has on the site. So it's not just a case of you saying, oh, I found some mouse droppings. We go in and we say, well, we found mouse droppings. This is the impact to the site. This is why we need to get rid of them. This is a bit about the biology and everything about the mouse and how it leaves the droppings and what the risk is and everything. So our reports are in depth like that. And that's the same for cardboard storage, if they've got mouse droppings, to a food site, if they've got mouse droppings.
I mean, that's a good technician. That's a good point that you've got there, Debbie. You know, even on your every day-to-day reporting, there is no, okay, some days are a bit lazier than others, but really you should be looking at it, and rather than just writing down, I found a few mouse droppings, you should be writing, I found a few mouse droppings. This is a problem because mice can cause contamination and it is a real risk to human health. So therefore today I have ensured that I have cleaned these droppings up, or I recommend you clean these droppings up. Don't just say, oh, I found some mouse droppings. There's a gap under the door. So what? There's a gap under the door. There's a gap under the door that could allow mice to access the property. And that's something that you should be doing as just an ordinary technician. You should be doing, really.
And I having been a technician myself, I know how difficult it is. And sometimes I get technicians saying to me, but, you know, I make the recommendations and the site don't do anything about it. And I'll say, there's a difference between making a recommendation and saying you've got a gap at the bottom of the door, and making a recommendation and saying, and what can happen if you don't seal that gap? And I say to them, are you telling the site, if you don't seal that gap and you get a mouse come in and you get contamination and you get disease and you have the potential to produce food that's not fit for people to eat? And they go, oh, well, when you think about it that way. So it makes a lot of difference.
Absolutely. So, oh, sorry, you go on.
No, I'm just going to go down another rabbit hole, but you carry on, Alex.
No, I think I was going to go down a rabbit hole as well. So let's see if our rabbit holes meet in the middle here. I was about to say, so we kind of, like we've spoken about, there is this mythical qualification called a certified field biologist, and we've said what you need to be able to do that. You know, it's a fairly clear, logical pathway. You need so many years X, you need to be doing Y, ba, 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 ba. Now, I think what probably confuses a lot of other people is, how do you become a field, just a regular field biologist? How do you get down that pathway? What do you need to do? And Debbie, from your experience as you got into this, how do you do that first field biology site? You're turning up to that first audited site, which is a low risk, low impact site. Let's say, as Hugh says, it's your box manufacturer, low impact, low risk. You can do that as a regular field biologist, not as a certified field biologist. But how do you take that first step? Because there's probably lots of people here listening thinking this is all hoodoo and voodoo and it's well beyond what I need and what I can do. But how do we take those first steps, Debbie?
I think a passion for, it's going to sound really cheesy, but I think a passion for pest controllers. Looking at all the guys and girls on here asking questions, they're sitting here at 7:45 on a Friday night. They've got passion in pest control. They're interested in pest control and what we do. And you need to have an interest in what you do. You need to have an interest in walking through that door to maybe be a problem solver. To maybe, I walk through the door and I look at the site and I'm like, right, okay, bang, what am I going to find? Even though I've got this site doing the same thing down the road and this site, it's going to be so different. So what are my experiences going to be when I walk through the door? And yeah, we're problem solvers. Same as technicians, we're problem solvers. We're there to help. We're there to give information. We're there to give advice. We're there to help the pest control company. We are there as an independent consultant. I'm there to work with a pest control company, and I'm there to also help that pest control company to, I speak to the technicians. I will speak to the technicians afterwards and I'll say, right, okay, what can I do to help you? Is there anything I can do to help you? Is there anything you need me to do? I'm going to go to site. Is there anything you need me to do when I'm on site? Are there any areas that you have concerns about? And they will say, well, I found that here last time, or I found that here last time. I made a recommendation. Could you have a look at that when you're there? And so you're working alongside the pest control company as well. Field biologist sounds very sort of, I didn't go to university. I came up through the ranks. I came up from a technician up to a biologist. So my passion in pest control helped me through my career. Bit cheesy, but
you've got to love what you do. And certainly with field biology, they're long days, aren't they? We generally sell them in blocks of half a day or a full day, but a big site, how many hours would you expect to spend on a medium to large sized site in terms of inspection time, not including the write-up time afterwards?
I would expect for a medium to large site a minimum of a day, because I'm there. Okay, I'm in every area, but I also check the bait stations when I'm there. So I'll go around every single area. I will check all the bait stations, internal and external, and I'll make notes on what I find in the bait stations. I make recommendations on each one of the site. I take photos of every recommendation that I find. I make notes on it. I climb behind things when I probably shouldn't do. Nearly got stuck once at a foam factory. But I climb behind things. I'm not very good at climbing up things because I don't really do heights. But where I can, I'll be looking in every area that I can find. And that takes time. Sometimes somebody from the site would like to walk around with you. So you're explaining to them, excuse me, as you're walking around the site, you're explaining to them, what you're finding. How long does this door remain open during the day? What's your door policy in this area? This sort of thing. How often do you rotate your stock in this particular area? So you're always asking questions as well. So a biologist, especially, you're absolutely right. It can take a very long time. And the technician might go in there and they might be able to do the inspection or routine in half a day. I can guarantee that I'm going to be in there for a minimum of sort of 6 or 7 hours at some sites. Hence the reason I have such a long report. My poor husband has to proofread them every time. He's like, oh, not another one. Yeah, another one.
It was a different rabbit hole.
Okay, go for it.
It was actually the process of actually doing a field biologist visit, because the way that I used to do them and the way that Neil does them, and whether he doesn't know this, but he actually taught me something. I don't like to tell him that, mind. But so what Neil does is and I watched him do it, which was a great idea, because I was forever having to flick backwards and forwards in in the folders. What he actually does is blank piece of paper, writes down what's actually on the specification first, 8 routine visits, 4 fly killer visits, then does a little graph, writes down the dates when the routine visits are, and then checks each of the different, is it on the checklist? Is it on the trend analysis, that routine report coincides with that checklist entry? Was there an issue on that date? Where's the follow-ups for those dates? Rather than keep flicking to and fro, which I used to do a lot, that was a much better way of doing it, so that you can, you've got the information there. You can, when you're going through a folder that's this thick, you can find you've got it there. Oh yeah, there's the follow-up procedure for that. The follow-up procedure, I've written it down. It's 2 follow-ups at whatever. I can check it against that. So that, I don't know if everybody does that the same, or whether you do that. But that was a good tip that Neil taught me anyway.
Were you a field biologist for a particular company? So were they your technicians that you were looking at when you went out there?
I did work for another company at one stage, yes.
So they were your technicians employed by your company? So yes. You're almost like QAing at the same time. Were you QAing? Yes. Yeah, okay. So we don't do as such a QA. You look in the folder and you make sure that everything's up to date. All the certificates are up to date, or the data sheets are up to date, and all the information's up to date. And depending on what reporting format we use, depends on whether or not we actually put it on the report, or whether we put it separately and then go and speak to the pest control company afterwards about it.
Right.
Rather than sitting there, because we are employed by the pest control company, so we can't do that and then go to the customer on the site and say blah blah blah, we found all this, because then all you're doing is you're just like dropping the pest control company in it, and we're working on behalf of them. So we make information. I might say, yeah, BPCA certificate's out of date, your insurance company's out of date, this follow-up, I've seen you've got toxic bait outside and I have no indication of rat activity outside. Can you explain this? So I'll take that information and I'll go back to them, but it won't be something that I'll put in the actual report to the site.
Perfect. And I think to follow on with that, there is no industry standard template, much in the same way that we don't have an industry standard template for treatment reports or for site surveys, despite many efforts made by some people to try and standardize these things. The same with field biology reports. Other than reporting to the standard, as in looking through the standard and making sure that person's done all those other bits in there, there is a lot of additional information that a good field biologist will put in there around the audit standards, looking for recommendations and the rest of it. And there is no standardized, we're using the word standard too much, but there's no set template for what your report should look like. And so some field biologists will literally just do a list of, here are your non-conformances. And we've seen those, the big companies will go in, their field biologists will say, right, clause 3.4.1, you have not adequately proofed the door frames here, here, and here. And it'd just be that. It'll just be a list of non-conformances.
Oh, I saw.
Good report in my, yeah.
Sorry, Alex, I just come into my. I saw one. I did interrupt that. I saw one by another company the other day, and it was just like, if I'd been the client, I'd have chucked it in the bin, because it was a block of text. Boom, like that. And then exactly what you said, just a list of different things. And there were no photographs, there were no explanations. It was hideous, in my opinion.
And that's it. You're writing a report that needs to be legible, understandable, and it needs to have value to it as well. And Debbie's, I think, has pointed out there that the value comes in the education of your experience that you are passing on to that other person. Now, to go on another rabbit hole. Oh, Debbie,
can I just say, I've got a question here from Philip, saying he'd like to see a longer training period for certified field biologists, similar to the old BPC or British Pest diploma. So, Philip, what sort of thing was it? The 1-day course at the BPCA run on how to become a field biologist? Would that be something that you want to see as a week-long course, the same as the RSPH level 2, or what sort of thing do you think?
While he types out his answer, I would say I have to agree. For a course that is so high up in our industry, there isn't a huge amount of formalized courses for it. I know Paul Westgate did mine many years ago, and he does a fantastic course. But yeah, it is a very reduced course, because the assumption is by the time you've got to that point, you should have most of that information there. I think probably what would be better, and Debbie, you can weigh in on this, is not necessarily an additional course for getting the certified field biologist, because that's in-house, and for years of experience have shown that they've got that course down, but maybe a training program or a course that doesn't end in a qualification, but to train people to be a field biologist, to get them all of the information they need to know to become confident and competent to do a site. So yeah, and like I say, it would be exactly that, Neil. It would be a 2 to 3 day experience-led knowledge-sharing episode of, right, here we go. Today we're going to go around Tetra Pak and we're going to have a look to see what we need to do in this environment, and something like that. So Debbie, your thoughts on how we can...
I absolutely agree. I mean, when I did my my certified field biologist, I didn't do any courses. Alex, you helped me out massively when I was doing my insect ID, testing me on my scientific names. Coming out with all
I remember that.
like, really? Come on, be serious. And then he goes off on a tangent. And I was like, you're showing off now, aren't you? But I'd say I didn't do a course. I just drew on the knowledge that I've done from doing it for such a long time. But I think what Neil says, something like a 2 to 3 day hands-on practical training, I think it's a great idea. And I think we as an industry should be doing more field training, more hands-on training. It's you wouldn't expect somebody to drive a car just by reading a manual and getting in a car and driving. You have to have those lessons. You have to be out in that car and hit things or do things. But so I definitely think, a hands-on experience is a really good idea, Alex.
I was about to say, so right, you're just listening to you be like, yeah, when you learn to drive a car, one of the fundamental parts of learning to drive a car is learning to hit things. No, Debbie, it's learning to avoid to hit things.
No.
I was about to say, to take a step away from the field biology for just a second, because another very large part of your role as a consultant is, as you say, it's training and education, which are two very different things. And so with that, can you talk us through some of your experiences, or should I say, some of your hopes for the future of training? And I think you've alluded to it a little bit there, which is a way in which we change that training. So talk us through how you train and what you think we should be doing with it.
Absolutely. Our training courses, as majority of the training courses, are classroom. We don't do online training. We do classroom training. We do one of the courses, we do aluminium phosphide, and the second day of aluminium phosphide is going out into the field and actually doing a dummy treatment. So you're actually doing some hands-on for that qualification. The RSPH level 2 certificate is, you spend a day going out and actually doing pest control. So I think going forward, going out there and shadowing a pest control company, going out there with the technicians, you're absolutely right, Alex, having the technicians coming out with a biologist, even if we have some specific sites that work with us, you know, maybe a food site, a non-food site, logistics, all these sort of things, and having them on board and sort of saying to them, you know, we want to make sure that, you know, we want to bring guys to the level to understand the different requirements of different sites and what we're looking for. And can we use your site as an example and bring people around? And taking, I'm quite happy to take techs out for the day. I say to my, excuse me, when I do inspections, I did an inspection last week and the technician said, can he come with me? I said, I'm more than happy for you to come with me. If you want to come with me. He wasn't doing a routine there. So it wasn't like we were conflicting interests and I'm doing the inspection, he's doing the routine. He came out with me to have a look at the site, to see the sort of things that I was talking about, the sort of things that we were looking for, the changes that we could possibly make on site going forward. So I think absolutely, I think having a hands-on going out in the field is a really good idea.
I've got to sort of big up Rentokil again, I'm afraid, because when I did my training for field biologist, we were sent out with a field biologist for a few days. I can remember going to Tewkesbury's feed mill, flour mill, and a couple of other sites with them, but there was only one standard then, and that was special reporting service, as it was. But it was very important that you actually went out and saw hands-on to how you went about doing an field bio, whatever you want to call it, in-depth inspection. Yes, everything's in depth, but it is different.
When I started at Rentokil, I was trained by a biologist. So I went out with the biologist for my first training. Not every day, because I was out with one of the technicians, but I spent days out with a biologist, going to bigger sites, helping to identify the insects that we were coming across that you probably wouldn't see at a lot of the technician sites. So we were doing that. When I became a biologist, there was no, go out with a biologist. But at the time, the head of the biologist team was a really good biologist himself. So you had someone there to mentor you as well, to help you, to advise you on things and how to go about doing inspections and that sort of thing. So I think, so I was Rentokil 8.5 years.
Because it is quite daunting, isn't it? When, if you're a technician, you take a while to learn a place, especially if it's a big place, because these places, they're not small. Well, some of them are, but some of them are massive. And you get sent to somewhere and you're told to go and do whatever you want to call it, in-depth inspection. It's like, where in the hell do I start? So it can be quite a daunting prospect if you're not used to, in some way, or shown how to do it for those first few.
So I was a technician, and then at the time they had high dependency technicians or HD technicians. And HD technicians was a step up from a technician, and we were doing the big supermarkets and the big trunking stations and the big warehouses as well. So you were sort of getting a bit of experience of moving away from the smaller places to working in the bigger places, even though you weren't actually doing the biologist work. So you were getting out and experiencing the reporting that you were having to do, how it was not a level up, but how you were expected to carry out the report and the things you were expected to put in that report and things you were expected to look at.
There's a question there, Alex. Go on.
Oh, so I've got another question which I need to ask, and hopefully my internet holds out long enough, because it's worded so beautifully that we have to address this. It's from Nathan Clark, and for those who want to hear this, absolutely fantastic question. When studying animal behavior in fragmented habitats, how do you differentiate between behavioral plasticity and actual evolutionary adaptation in response to environmental pressures like pesticides or urbanization? So with that, I think what Nathan's broadly asking is, when you're doing a one-off field biology visit a year and you make your recommendations, how, is it fair for us to turn around and say you haven't got on top of these mice because there's a problem, or how do we establish if there is something such as behavior resistance, or if we're looking at animal behavior that's being driven by an external stimulus, such as exposure to pesticides or exposure to site processors, for example? So Debbie, how would you, when you go and do your site visits and you, sorry, can we hear me okay? Is this all working? Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, when you do your site visits, of course, you're a snapshot in time, aren't you? Just there for a day. And when you make your recommendations, how do you establish if those animals are acting abnormally? How do you root cause that? And I've given it away now with the root cause, but how do you do that trending? How do you do that root cause analysis, having only been there for a day?
Hello, Nathan. How are you? Nice of you to join us. I do know Nathan, and I knew that he was going to ask us a question like this. Thank you very much. I'll speak to him tomorrow.
Tomorrow.
I find that a lot of information can be found in the folder as well. So I will go through the previous treatment reports and I will look to see whether or not there is some sort of trend building up. I look through the checklists. I look through what products they're using. I look through the amount of products that they're using. I look to see whether or not they've had to change the active ingredient over because of any particular reason. I look to see whether or not they're saying there's no sign of activity, but there's in an area where there is quite obviously activity, So there's lots of things, lots of information that's available to you. Even in the reports that the technicians are writing, you can read between the lines and pick up information from the reports, say of the previous visits. Like, always make sure I have a good look through the previous reports, because there's the great technicians out there. They really are. They do a fantastic job. I know I've been a technician. I know how difficult it can be, and they do a fantastic job.
Yeah, and I think you've hit the nail on the head there, which is your treatment report should be more than just, that extra information you put in goes towards, exactly as you said, building a root cause analysis through trending of data, and being able to see those things from an elevated perspective, let's say. So yeah, the power of data is phenomenal. And Nathan, I think we all owe you a pack of Smarties for such a, beautifully worded question.
Yeah. Hugh, X-Renticle, yeah. I'd say when I was a technician, and I do apologise to everybody out there, because unfortunately through sort of poor practice, obviously don't shoot me, it wasn't just me, but through poor practice over a period of time, we were never told about behaviour resistance. We were never told about physiological resistance. We were just sent out. We were trained and told on what to do, but we were never told that the reason you're putting loads of bait down the rats to get fat is because you've probably got physiological resistance. So there's a lot more information now, I think, for the technicians. We did I don't know if you did a residential, we did a 5-day residential, and we were, during that 5-day residential, we were told about vertebrates, invertebrates and health and safety, but we didn't go into the behaviour resistance and things like that. Whereas now, the training courses that we do, we talk about that sort of thing. And we talk about, when we make the technicians aware that this can happen and this can happen, and you're possibly getting this because of this is happening. So there's a lot more information, and this is what I mean by the reporting. Because the technicians are being trained now and be given a lot more information on that sort of thing, we can then use those reports to help build up a trend and build up a reasoning as to why this is happening, why this isn't happening. I don't know how you feel about that, Hugh, whether that was the same for you.
You dropped out at the middle. I didn't hear the question, all of the question.
So when I was a technician, we were never told about physiological resistance or behaviour resistance. And unfortunately, through our poor practice, continuously putting the bait down and using the same products, we've added to the problem, I think, of today. So, but I'm saying now there's more information. It's included in training courses. When I did the first initial training,
got you.
I was never told about that. So we can use the information now and be a bit more knowledgeable about it all.
Well, there's so much more
Me?
information now, isn't there? And the other thing is, when I first started and did my first training with Rentokil, there probably was very little to hardly any behavioral resistance, really. It just started coming in, and I think it was the bull ring, wasn't it, in Birmingham when it was first recognised by
Midland mice.
Rentokil?
Midland mice.
No, the bull ring.
Yeah, Midland mice in
Oh, it
Birmingham.
was Midland, was it? Yeah. I don't go anywhere past Bristol, so it means nothing to me. But yeah, that's just when it started coming in. So I did my training at U Lodge before that kicked off. But now there's just so much more information anyway, isn't there? You either had your black Rentokil manual that you kept in under your seat in the van, and your technical releases that you got. That was it. But now you can just go on the internet, have a quick look. Go on, Alex.
Yeah, I was about to say, I would put my head on the block here and say behavioral resistance hasn't become more prevalent since we had, in the last decade or so. I think what has become more is our ability to surveil mice remotely. And so with that, we are seeing box aversion in real time, through even low-tech options like tracking powders and dusts, which have become more widely available now, and we can actually see that rodent moving up to a box, moving away from a box, not engaging with it, from digital cameras, where we literally can see them stick their nose on the trap and then be like, no, this sounds like a terrible party, and then disappearing off. So I think behavioral resistance has just become more visible. In previous times, you would have put your traps down, you would have put paint down, you would have found a couple of dead rats or a couple of dead mice, and then there would have been no activity, and you sit there and you say, job done, happy days, walk away. But now we know better. And Debbie, again, as training, thoughts on this? Hugh says you can go on the internet and you can learn a lot. I am more of the opinion that there's a lot more value to be had in spending a day and going and listening to an expert talk on these matters, the training around this. So again, bring this back to training. I know you deliver training on rodent biology and behavior and stuff like that. So with that, is it worth the money at the end of the day? Is it worth a technician taking a day of their lives out to go and do these things?
Absolutely. I absolutely 100%. You go, people learn from people. So when we do our training, everybody's got a story to tell. And it may be that some guy's been doing it for, just coming into the industry. You may have somebody that's just doing some retraining, and people learn from people. We ask each other questions. I'm not just there to tell you about it. I'm there to learn from your experiences as well. Because there's been times when somebody said something and I'm like, do you know what? I didn't think of that, or it's given me a different perspective on something. So yeah, absolutely. 100% classroom, talking to people, discussion is, I think, is the way forward for training.
Yeah. I would also add to that yeah, you can do self-led training, you can read a book, you can go on these things, but the reality of it is the point of training is you don't know what you don't know. So if you are the one in charge of asking the questions and looking for the answers, how do you tend to ask questions that you already kind of know the answer to, because that's it. But when you go on an instructor-led training, they are going to take you down a rabbit hole that you may never have considered before, because it's something that's so far into your blind spot, it's never there. Hugh?
I find that, I got to admit, and I do watch it, and I find internet training tit boring. It goes to one ear. It literally, it goes in that ear and it's out the other one. I've forgotten it the next day. I got my CPD points for doing it, but I couldn't recall all from it.
I think that's your age.
Yeah, probably. But when I go to, when you do go to training, whether it's MPTA day, BPCA day, or proper in classroom training, you absorb so much more. It's just so much more interesting. What for me, obviously there is a place for online training because you don't have to travel, but it needs to be to listen to somebody a day's training on the internet is like, oh my God. No. So there's definitely, yeah, I would definitely say it's worth it.
Question. What happens if you're doing online training and you have a question? Who's there to answer your question? There's nobody there, to answer a question that you may have. So you walk away still none the wiser on that specific question. That's what I find.
I have to say, sorry, Hugh, just very quickly, one of my best subscribed courses that I ran when I was doing was an environmental risk assessment course, which was practically orientated. It was a practical environmental risk assessment course, and I have to say, for a topic that was so, it sounds so vanilla, it sounds so boring, an environmental risk assessment course, who would sign up to that? But it was a practical course. It was done outside. It was actually done up on the farm where the lab containers are, and it was perfect because it meant that, okay, we had that necessary little bit in the morning. That was all of your sort of like whiteboard stuff and all of your coursework. And then we actually went out on a farm when we actually did things. And I have to say, watching pest technicians get involved, doing what they want to do. You sit there, you stand in the middle of the farm and you say, find me the wildlife, and watch everyone scurry like lemons looking for it. That, I believe, is the future of training. That is how we get the message across by doing. I think it's such a wonderful way of doing things, unless it's raining, in which case it's piss poor and horrible. But there we go.
When we do the aluminum phosphide, we do environmental risk assessments, and we were using my horse yard for my horse, and we were walking through the fields, and they were looking around, and they was like, we've never seen anything like this before, because we get to site, and this is a bit of we talk about risk assessments for a minute. Can we talk about risk assessments? Okay, risk assessments.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. It's very difficult to explain to somebody without showing them an area of how to do your risk assessment. So you going out and in the farm and showing them people, and when I took them down the yard and showing them the sort of things we're looking for, and it opens up a whole new world. But I find that especially when we do health and safety and legal aspects, and we talk about risk assessments, we talk about the difference between risk assessments and environmental risk assessments and things, because as an industry, correct me if I'm wrong, everybody please, but I don't think we do enough on risk assessments in certain areas. That's just me throwing it out there. When I've asked people, do a risk assessment with me, what do we do? What sort of things do we do? And they're like, well, it's pretty much done by the company, and we don't have to really get involved in it a lot of the time. How do you guys feel about that? Is that something you've come across?
You first, because you've got techs.
I've done quite a bit of reading on risk assessment again, but I've never been actually physically taken and shown anything about it. That was a bit, I've never done it in person. Well, been shown in person.
I say there's two things to risk assessments that our industry gets a little bit arse about face. Number one, you should do a risk assessment prior to undertaking any kind of work. However, the only risk assessment that we're only ever taught is your 5x5 matrix. And when do you do that? You do that when you get back to the office, having already been on site, having already set up, having done everything, and you go back then, you'd be like, oh, hang on a second, I was in the danger zone then. And it's absolutely no use whatsoever knowing that you were sort of like at risk after having put yourself at risk. So number one, we've got that. So I would strongly recommend folks looking into a process called dynamic risk assessments or dynamic field assessments, which is just a series of 20 questions. Is the access to the place safe? Will I need to work at height? Will I need to do? If yes, then this is what I will do.
But we do that anyway, don't we? You do that in your mind. You don't have to write it down.
You absolutely should write it down. Write it down.
No. If we genuinely speaking, yes, okay, we should. But if you're getting pushed for 15 routines a day and 10 wasp nests, you are not going to sit there and do a 20 question risk assessment for every job. In reality, that's not going to happen.
You can do it on a sheet of paper. If you can do your
You ain't gonna do
environmental
it.
risk assessment,
You ain't going to do it. Technicians ain't going to do it. They're going to look at it and go, am I going to fall off that ladder? No, I'm not.
Right. So, to put this into some perspective, last week, HSE took to court and won, and a woman has...
I get that. I understand that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying it shouldn't be done, but I'm saying in reality, is it going to be? Probably not.
No. So to finish this story, a paddleboard instructor who was taking people down a river, had been done for survey, if you've seen this, basically failed to give a proper health and safety risk briefing at the beginning of her tour, and as a result, 4 people died on a weir. Now, this is a weir that ostensibly she had been over and around with groups on before, and there'd been no problems. But the fact that she didn't make folks aware, or wasn't, meant that she went to jail for that thing. Now, you as either an employer, and even if you work by yourself, just as a one-person entity, you are still an employer. You are employing yourself. You are responsible for making sure that yourself or your staff are safe. And if that takes an extra 15 minutes of your day, I don't see that as being a particularly bad, offset. If it's a 20 question, things. Is the place on fire? Yes, no, yes, don't enter. Like, as you say, it's common sense, but it all comes down to, if you write it down, then it's justification. If you write it down after the fact, then it's an excuse. There we go.
Can I just touching on that as well? If you don't do some sort of risk assessment, and let's say, for example, worst case scenario, you have an accident, and the accident ends up going to court, and the prosecutor says, "Well, where's your justification that you could do that safely?" If you don't have a risk assessment, how do you then justify that you've assessed it and done it safely if you don't have a written risk assessment? Just a question.
I get what you're saying, but I genuinely believe that 50%, at least 50% of pest control technicians out there wouldn't do a risk assessment for every single job or routine visit that they did. Just not going to happen. I'm playing devil's advocate here. I agree. They're just not.
I agree. And
I mean, I think, you go to a site for a routine visit, you may have you may have a generic risk assessment in the folder that was written 3 years ago that says, there's forklifts moving around on the site and I need to wear a high vis. But something might have changed in the last 6 weeks. It's just not going to happen. Sorry, I'm stumbling because it's just not going to happen. I can't see it happening. I'm not saying it's right. I will, caveat that.
I think it's all part of this shifting culture of pest management, isn't it? As we become more professional, it does come with more strings and whistles and red tape. Sometimes that can seem really irksome, and I would argue that other times it's probably for the best. Hugh?
I was going to quickly go on to another quick subject because we're running out of time.
Yeah, let's do away with this.
For everybody that, we talked about being a field biologist, but the reality is that most people that become a field biologist will be employed by people. They're not going to be the chances are of them working on their own or a small 3-person company, except for Neil, but he was a field biologist before. So it's going to be an employed company, isn't it? So I would just say to everybody, if you're offered it, whatever training you're offered, if you're employed by somebody, take it, because that's how you're going to work up the ladder. You're not going to pay for yourself to go and do it.
Absolutely. Knowledge is power at the end of the day, isn't it? And you get knowledge through listening, talking, learning. So I think you're absolutely 100% right. If you're offered it, even if you're not offered it, make a noise. You know, if you feel you need it, then get it. If you see something you want to do and you think it's going to bring value, you know, because if we're talking to our employer, you know, to get them to stick their hand in their pocket, they're going to need something back from that training course. So if they think they're going to get value from that technician for the money they're going to spend on a course, then it's absolutely worth doing.
Yes, Neil, that's right. There are plenty of independent consultants that have previously worked for a company. But what I'm saying is, which is correct, that there are, but what I said is, what I'm thinking is there's nobody that starts at zero and thinks to themselves, I'm going to be a field biologist, and then work on their own, is there? There aren't very many that do that. They're going to have worked for somebody else.
There are some, but Debbie, go.
Sorry, is that because there's no real career path yet?
Quite possibly.
Quite possibly. If there was, you know, you find, this is just me personally, I think that people come into pest control a lot of the time because they know somebody in it or their family's been in it. You know, how often were you at school and a pest control guy came around and said, you know, a biologist came around and said, what about a career in pest control? What about doing this? This is, you know, there is a career path, there is a career in pest control, and is that people don't do that because there isn't an actual structured career path, and it's not advertised, or we don't just say it.
Yeah, I think that's correct.
Absolutely, and this folds back in the conversation. We won't rehash old ground, but around the qualifications framework, which is very difficult to go into a school and say, hey, there's a career in pest management and this is the path you wish to take if you wish to continue on in, you know, go to agricultural college and learn the rest of it. There used to be in my local agricultural college a course in gamekeeping. I don't believe they do that anymore. You know, if they can create a diploma in gamekeeping, I'm relatively certain we can create a qualifications framework for pest management, and we are working on it. It's just taking a little time. Now we're coming up to the end of the podcast, and so I want to do the age-old switcheroo after Hugh has his next question.
I've got a new question to ask.
Okay.
Debbie, what do you think is the one thing that we aren't talking about that we should be talking about, whether it's in the world or whether it's in pest control?
That's a question, isn't it? What should we be talking about
that we're not talking about?
I think safety, health and safety in the world, health and safety in pest control. I think there's a lack of it in what we do. We do a very, very high risk job in a lot of cases, and we don't value health and safety, I don't think, high enough for what we do. And I think professionalism, we are a professional industry, and as such, you know, we need to command from people. So what about you? What do you think?
What do I think?
Yeah,
I wouldn't put me down that route. To be honest,
I'd agree. If I was to say what we're not talking about enough, I think it's I will take the second part of your statement, which is I don't think we talk enough about the good things that come from pest management. I think a lot of society sees the blunt end of pest management. It sees necessarily not the, you know, it sees the very short-term effect. It sees the effect that we have on that population of animals. But what I don't think we talk about enough, or isn't talked about enough, is the long-term sort of like protection from disease, reduction of damage, you know, the removal of distress from the general populace. And this was seen during COVID. When we stopped doing what we did, rats went everywhere. People, you know, they were running up and down people's gardens. I think we don't talk enough about the positive impacts to society of pest management that go beyond the crisis management of having a rat in someone's back garden. And that would be my opinion on that.
I'd have to agree with that.
I agree with that, and I think at the end of the day, we save lives. We save people's lives, and people just see us as the rat man, the rat lady. We save people's lives. We are superheroes without the cape. If you want to wear a
I
cape
think
in your spare time, that's up to you. But we are superheroes. We save lives.
much going back on last week's podcast as well. I think that we kowtow to the Fluffy Bunny Brigade a little bit too much, and it is about time that people did realise that there is real danger out there. It might be only a small amount of people that get Virus disease, but if you're one of those people that does, it ain't much fun, and various other public health issues as well. And I don't think we shout enough and say, in a polite way, to the anti-brigade, shut up, this is what we do and this is why we need to do it.
I mean, to put this into another much more tangible impact,
Polite.
just put some numbers behind this. But no, I can be impolite if you so wish. But if we take the developing world, the losses to pests, vertebrate and invertebrate, is estimated in post-harvest crops to be around 30%. In the developed world, the losses to post-harvest crops is about 10%. Now, if you really want to help the environment, if you think about it, if you are losing 10% of your post-harvest crop in southeast England to rats and to weevils, then you have to budget on that 10% loss, which means that for every 9 fields you plant, you need to plant out a 10th to accommodate for that loss. Where does that extra field come? Well, it's going to come from virgin meadowland, from woodland, from these diverse bioculture areas that you're then pancaking and turning into monoculture. So actually, if we were more proactive about preventing pests in these rural environments, and we reduced that post-harvest crop from 10% down to 1%, let's say, then suddenly we have a lower reliance on the amount of land that we need for agriculture. That offsets your carbon footprint. It also increases the amount of available virgin meadow and woodland to allow a greater biodiversity. So actually, who's the bad guy here? Us, that are having to sort of like take strict measures to the rats and the mice and the weevils in your grain store, or actually, the farmer who's having to then plant out an extra so many hectares to accommodate for that loss. It's all of these things at the end of the day, that the impacts of our industry are well beyond just the pointy end of the stick. More space for pests, win-win. Okay. But I mean, so there we go. That would be my, to take a completely different look at that. That's the kind of good that we do. So yeah.
I agree.
Alex, the question.
The question or the questions, which we're going to do.
All
I
of
mean,
them.
all of them, all at the same time. So with that, our last 3 questions. I'll ask the first one. Have you enjoyed your time on the podcast, Debbie?
Yes, I have, very much. Yeah, I was a little bit apprehensive because, you don't know what questions you're going to get asked or stuff like that. And you try not to incriminate yourself too much. And, but yeah, I have. It's been great. And the questions have been great. And it's lovely to see people at 8:30 on a Friday night when they could be down in the pub getting absolutely
Slaughtered.
whatever, showing and having a passion for pest control.
Yeah,
So,
I like to think that actually there are people down the pub at the same time as watching
they
this.
are on their phones.
Getting...
Well, I know Nathan Clark is probably down the pub somewhere or has got a beer in his hand. So I'll be having words with him later. Thanks, Ricky. I appreciate that. Thank you for joining us. It's been, I've been really enjoyed it. Been really informative.
Give us a shameless plug then, Debbie.
Wilson Pest Management and Training for all your training needs. And we also do field biologist inspections as well. So give us a call. That's exactly what it says on the tin.
That was a good one.
It was a good one. And
that was a good one.
Keep the faith. For those who are listening back, we'll put Debbie's details into the chat and onto the podcast, so you can find her more easily and or through her website. Lovely stuff. So I'll ask the last one, which is, who would you like to see next on Beauties and Beasties? What face would you like to see sat in your chair?
Well, I could say somebody, but I know he'd probably say no. I'd like to see another lady. I'd like to see someone like Mandy Haggard, because it's lovely to have ladies. I mean, we've got other ladies here online. It's lovely to have ladies in pest control.
We do try to balance it quite well.
Pardon?
We do try to balance it quite well.
Yeah. But in the industry altogether, it's lovely to see. We still get I couldn't do your job in certain places, but it's lovely to see ladies in pest control. Love you too, Nathan. Thank you.
So we have Anna coming up again. Anna Mullins,
Anna, fantastic. I've worked with Anna before. Very knowledgeable lady. Yeah, very passionate about pest control.
She's actually coming back for a double episode. One of our only return customers. And we have Dr. Hannah Fair coming up as well to talk about the impacts of pests on people. So that should be a good one. And we also have coming up in due course Nigel Cheesewright from Crew, the Crew chairman. Marcus Scruggs coming up. I can't remember everybody off the top of my head.
Tales from the Crawl Space. We've got another
podcast
coming on.
Yeah, amongst many others we've got lined up. Luciano.
Yes.
Yeah. So we've got quite a few.
I'd like to add two other things. Number one, if you are listening to this and you are a female pest controller operator or person within the industry and you want to talk to more like-minded folks, we have had previous guests on, Jenny from Pestogen podcast. They do a fantastic podcast, but also they have a Facebook group orientated towards women in pest control. You can join that, you can chat, you can tell everyone how all the men you know are bastards, or just talk about pest control and have a bit of fun and talk to like-minded people. And number two, to round this up, we started talking about field biology. We'll end talking about field biology. I can't recommend enough that if you have questions about how to get into field biology, if you have questions about that career pathway or just additional learning you can have, I can't recommend there be more highly with this. So please get in contact and just see what you can do and where you can go. We're a big industry with a small number of people in it. It's very unlikely we are going to crowd ourselves out by sharing a little bit of knowledge. So please do get in contact with Debbie. She is a phenomenal teacher. There we go.
That's it. Sounds good.
That's it.
Thank you.
With that, I will wish you all a good night, and we'll see you all later.
Cheers, everyone.
See you all next week.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Thank you for listening to the Beauties and Beasties podcast.